Calvin Dock joins us now. He's the president of RC Communications. Calvin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
High-stakes politics in Congress. What would the shutdown mean?
Well, I think that fortunately, because there were spending bills that were passed early in the year, it will only be a partial shutdown. But that is really serious because we're coming up to the holidays. So even though federal workers will get paid, I know I wouldn't want to be missing a paycheck the day before Christmas or the week of Christmas. So I think from optics and a political standpoint, it's a lot bigger than the actual effect of the partial shutdown.
Do you see any way to a compromise on this? Because this is over the building or money to build that border wall, right?
You know what I think is interesting is that earlier this week, President Trump, the Senate signed a bill that had a little over $1 billion for the wall, which angered some Democrats, but they bit the bullet so we wouldn't have a shutdown. I actually think if there are successful negotiations this weekend, it might get back to where it already was on Wednesday. But once again, President Trump knows how to play that politically because he had that Wednesday. We've talked about this since then, and there's a big political fight. And if he gets that $1 billion, then he gets to say he got at least a start on his wall.
Is his hope that he might get a little bit more this time?
Yes, and I think, too, what's really important in this situation is this is the last time that President Trump will be able to make these types of demands while the Republicans have both chambers of Congress.
Right.
And it's been really interesting to see how commentators from the right and Republicans in this country have basically pushed him to this to say, the most you're ever going to get is before January 3rd. And so I think that President Trump is letting us know that from now to 2020, it's going to be about opposition to what the Democrats want. And so politically, he wins, even if they don't get the funding, that he at least did all he can and is going to miss a few days in Mar-a-Lago with golf.
This has been quite a week for President Trump. I mean, we had, well, we got the shutdown, of course. Then there was the announcement about pulling troops out of Syria and out of Afghanistan as well. Then we had the resignation of the defense chief. What do you make of it?
Well, I think that this is probably the first time where I have seen even the staunchest supporters of the president have pause. I encourage everybody to read Secretary Madison's resignation letter because it was more than just a difference on policy, but he really said in very stark terms that he doesn't agree with President Trump's approach to how we deal with the world. And I think that has been a bigger shock in Washington than withdrawing troops from Afghanistan and Syria, which are still big, but those are things that they can have political debates on. But when the leader of your military says they don't trust you or can't be on the same page, that's much bigger.
You know, what would be puzzling to a lot of people is that if President Trump decides he wants to pull troops out of Syria or out of Afghanistan, you would think that he would contact his defense secretary and say, this is what I'm planning on doing.
Or let the corresponding bodies in Congress know. Or call up his allies, where we have our troops fighting alongside theirs. Here's the deal. Best case, he's just not communicating what his strategy is. Worst case, he's impulsive without a strategy. But when you're dealing with the military, both of those options are not comforting to us or our allies or the military personnel that are putting their lives on the line right now in those places.
You know, this is a president who's prided himself on saying that when I make promises, like I have done during the election campaign, I will implement those, I will carry them out. Is that what this wall dispute is about?
Yes, because of everything that President Trump talked about, this was what he mentioned when he came down the escalator in 2015. I was reading something the other day that I think every stump speech he made mentioned the wall more than anything else. And so he knows that if he can at least give the appearance of fighting for it, then that really takes down his chances of winning in 2020.
And as you point out, if Trump is going to be looking at what the Democrats, in the House at least, are going to be doing in the next session, what is the possibility of any legislation passing?
Well, I do think one of the things that got lost in this week's chaos was that there are some issues where Democrats and Republicans can't agree. The criminal justice reform that was passed this week is monumental in what it tries to do, even if some people don't agree with the different parts, but everything else overshadowed it. So I do think that once we get rid of the drama of things like the shutdown, there are issues like that, infrastructure, that the Democrats and Republicans could agree on, but that all gets thrown away over the drama and chaos that is Washington seemingly more and more today.
We could have quite a year ahead. Calvin Dock, thanks so much.
Thank you.